He expected a wife for Christmas, not the skill that saved his dying ranch. By Christmas Eve, the ranch had gone as quiet as Caleb Hart's hopes. The wind scraped across the frozen plains of eastern Wyoming, rattling the loose boards of the old barn like a warning. Caleb stood on the porch of the ranch house his grandfather had built, staring out at land that had once been alive with cattle and laughter. Now, half the pasture lay barren, the well sputtered more air than water, and foreclosure papers sat unopened on the kitchen table behind him. At 37, Caleb had done everything right. He stayed when others left. He worked sunup to sundown. He honored promises made by men long gone. Yet none of it had been enough. So when his sister insisted he try one last thing, an old-fashioned matchmaking service run by a church group, Caleb agreed, though not without embarrassment. The idea was simple: lonely ranchers, lonely women, honest intentions. He didn't expect romance. He expected practicality. A partner. Someone to help keep the place running. A wife for Christmas, he thought grimly. Or at least, a miracle. The bus arrived just before dusk. Caleb waited at the tiny depot, hat in hand, rehearsing polite small talk. When the doors opened, a handful of passengers stepped down. Then he saw her. She wasn't what he expected. Instead of a shy woman bundled in frills, she wore a heavy coat, sturdy boots, and carried a battered canvas bag slung over one shoulder. Her hair was tucked under a wool hat, her eyes alert, curious, kind. "You must be Caleb," she said, offering her hand without hesitation. "I'm Mara." Her handshake was firm. On the drive back to the ranch, silence settled comfortably between them. Mara watched the land with a thoughtful expression, not the pity Caleb feared. When they pulled in, she noticed the leaning fence, the tired windmill, the way Caleb's shoulders sagged as he shut off the engine. "This place has good bones," she said quietly. Caleb almost laughed. Almost. That first night was awkward but gentle. They ate stew, spoke of small things. Mara explained she'd grown up moving town to town, following her father's work. She didn't mention what kind. Caleb didn't pry. The next morning, Christmas Day, the well finally gave out. The pump groaned once, then fell silent. No water. In winter. With livestock still hanging on. Caleb felt something inside him crack. He leaned against the pump house, breath fogging the air, staring at the useless machinery. This was it. The last straw. Behind him, Mara knelt down. "Mind if I take a look?" she asked. Caleb blinked. "You know about wells?" She smiled, a little sadly. "My father was a mechanical engineer. Specialized in rural water systems. I learned by holding flashlights and asking too many questions." Within minutes, Mara had her coat off, sleeves rolled, hands blackened with grease. She worked methodically, quietly, explaining nothing unless Caleb asked. When she finally straightened, she wiped her hands on a rag. "The pump's not dead," she said. "Just worn and misaligned. It's been fighting itself." She showed him how to adjust it, how to replace a part using salvaged metal from an old tractor. When Caleb turned the handle again, water surged out, clear, steady, alive. He laughed, a sound that startled him with its rawness. He covered his face, overwhelmed. "I thought I was done," he said hoarsely. Mara didn't say anything. She just stood beside him. Over the next days, her impact became impossible to ignore. She repaired fencing in ways that saved materials. She redesigned the irrigation flow using gravity instead of electricity. She studied the land, the weather patterns, the soil. One evening, Caleb finally asked, "Why are you here?" Mara stared into her mug of coffee. "Because kindness once saved my family," she said. "After my father died, my mother and I were taken in by strangers who didn't have much, but shared what they had. I promised myself I'd do the same when I could. Caleb realized then, she hadn't come looking for security. She'd come offering it. But the foreclosure deadline loomed. One problem remained: money. Repairs alone wouldn't save the ranch. Then an unexpected letter arrived. Mara had quietly contacted a sustainable agriculture nonprofit she once volunteered with. She'd sent them photos, data, plans. They approved a grant on the condition Caleb was willing to try new methods. Caleb stared at the letter, stunned. "You did all this, without telling me?" She shrugged. "Hope works better when it's shared." That night, as snow fell softly over the ranch, Caleb understood something profound. He hadn't needed saving because he was weak. He'd needed help because no one survives alone. On Christmas Eve, 1 week after her arrival, Caleb stood in the barn as the cattle drank from the restored troughs. The ranch wasn't just alive, it was breathing again. He found Mara by the fence. "I expected a wife for Christmas," he said quietly. "Someone to fill a space." She looked at him, eyes warm but steady. "And instead, I found a partner who reminded me what this land, and life, could be." Mara smiled. "Good. Because I wasn't looking to be rescued." Caleb nodded. "Neither was I." They didn't promise forever that night. They didn't need to. What they shared was rooted in respect, compassion, and the belief that broken things, land, lives, hearts, can be restored when people show up for each other. As the lights of the ranch glowed against the dark winter sky, Caleb felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not relief. Hope. And that, he realized, was the greatest gift of all.